Hello, ABC members. I'm Barbara Shwom. I'm a faculty member at Northwestern University and have been an ABC member for a very long time.
And I'm Karl Keller, also an ABC member and an adjunct faculty member at Northwestern University.
Today, we are talking to you about getting started in communication consulting. In addition to our work at the university, we also together run a communication consulting company, Communication Partners. And it's about communication consulting that we are here to talk with you today. Karl and I are part of a core team for the ABC Consulting Special Interest Group, or SIG. And each year, that SIG at ABC's annual convention sponsors panels, many of which focus on getting started in consulting or how best to do consulting. And every year there is a big turnout at these panels. Sometimes it's standing room only. So we know that there is some interest in ABC in consulting. So when here asked if we could contribute to an ABC video for the e-lecture series, we saw this as a really good opportunity to take some of what the SIG has been presenting at conventions and to share it more broadly with the ABC community.
So today we're going to focus on 5 topics. What is communication consulting? How can you find opportunities if you decide to go into communication consulting? What are the steps in a consulting engagement? And we'll use a real life example to show you how that works. Then how can you turn your practice into a business, or some important business things you need to address if you're going to start a consulting business? And then finally, we're going to ask and answer the question, is consulting worthwhile for an academic? So let's talk about what communication consulting is.
There are lots of different things that fall under the umbrella of communication consulting. Training, coaching, writing, editing. You could develop tools for clients like templates or rubrics. You could develop strategies. You could work with them on developing a communication strategy or communicating business strategies.
And there are niches within those specific areas that you can address. So for example, in writing training, you can focus on technical writing. You can do seminars on emails and how to write a proper email or more successful email. You can focus on a particular industry and their particular communication needs, because each industry is different. You could focus on document types like regulatory reports or other kinds of business-specific documents. So there's a whole range of possibilities within each of these specific areas that you could address as a consultant.
So how do you find these opportunities? Now that we know what it is, you have to figure out how are you going to begin as a consultant? Do opportunities come looking for you and knocking at your door, or do you have to go out and find them, which is often called marketing?
So in our business, we've leveraged 2 paths. Working through the university, you can consult as a faculty member to other areas of the university, or developing your own business with your own contacts and doing your own marketing. So working through the university can be a great place to start because you already are a member of that community. So let's take a look at what that means.
One way to work through the university is to find the organizations in the university that provide consulting to outside businesses. For example, at Northwestern, Keller School of Management has a group and custom solution area that offers firm-specific consulting. We leveraged that connection to get a consulting job with a major company in the Chicago suburbs. We first offered a course through the group and custom solution to that company. It was a course called Creating Readable Strategy Documents. And then, in turn, that led to our own gig that we did under our own company's brand, and we began doing courses in strategic business writing for that company. So that was one way to work through the university.
You should also ask yourself who in the university needs writing coaching, communication coaching, and who doesn't get it. So for example, administrative staffs, science students, faculty, and also professional master's students. So these are opportunities for you to do consulting within the university. This kind of intra-university consulting is something that we've done. For example, here are 2 programs that we've been involved with, the Center for Genetic Medicine and the Northwestern University Prosthetics and Orthotics Center. And we've done very specific writing courses for them, customized with their material.
So is this a good idea? What are the pros and cons of doing your consulting through a university? There are some really good things about it. For example, there's probably very little travel, which is good, and there's minimal to no selling, which means that you're not spending a lot of time for which you're not going to be paid. You may be paid through the university payroll, which can help reduce some of the tax issues and the extra tax filing that you'd have to do. It's also likely to be repeat business. The cons are that you probably can't charge as much through the university as you might do independently. The university will want to take its part of the money also. So those are some of the pros and cons of doing this. But it's really a great place to start because you are part of that community, you know people, and you can get a foothold in consulting. You have credibility at your university already.
So what about developing contacts, business with your own contacts and doing marketing there? Let's look at that. So these steps can improve your chances of finding opportunities. Some people think that to start a business, you have to have a big formal marketing strategy. Well, you could do that, but we think there's an easy set of steps that don't necessarily reflect a big strategy, but can really help you improve your chances. Develop your contacts in school and out. Tell everybody you know that you do consulting. Seek out some specific partners that you can complement your skills with. Find a specific niche or two that you can work in. Learn about the industries that you decide to work in, and then finally create a web and LinkedIn presence. Absolutely essential. So if you open the phone calls that you get, what we call over the transom, where businesses call in and say, I need some help with my people on their communication skills or their writing. So the one thing we do want to say is don't say no. Take advantage of those opportunities as ways to get your foot in the door in that particular business and maybe even begin your consulting journey.
Actually, that is the way that I began consulting many, many years ago. When I was working with a partner other than Karl, a colleague at Northwestern. We got a phone call at Northwestern from an environmental consulting firm. They called the English department and they said, is there anybody in the English department that can help our people write better environmental consulting reports? The English department, which taught only literature, did not have an answer to this question, but they sent the phone call over to our writing program. And when we heard that question, my colleague, Penny Hirsch, that some of you might know, and I looked at each other and we said, we can do that. We actually had never done that, but we thought we could do that, and we did. And that was the beginning of a partnership that I had with her in consulting before Karl joined our business. Another thing you want to do is, as Karl mentioned, to let other people know that you are interested. So we hadn't actually let the English department know we were interested. They happened to find us, but after that, we let everybody that we know understand that we're interested in consulting, and any first contact can actually fuel business growth. Here's another story. A friend of my friend Penny Hirsch, my colleague, was complaining about the writing skills of his subordinates. This friend of a friend worked at Company A. So we were introduced to this friend of a friend, we put in a proposal, and we did a series of writing workshops and coaching sessions that spanned over a couple of years. We met many people at Company A, and one of those people moved to Company B. So Company A is in Chicago, Company B is in California. But the folks in California wanted pretty much what Company A had, so we started with a series of writing workshops and coaching sessions there. Then what happens? One of the people from those sessions moved to Company C. So we were hired again at Company C, and for this company, we did a 6-month job consulting with a team redesigning their standard operating procedures. And I have to say, it was really fascinating to meet with that team every week for 6 months in this long project. I learned a ton. Even more importantly, though, 2 of the people that we met in Company B moved to different positions in Company B. One of them wanted us to consult on SOPs, the standard operating procedures, and we did that. even more importantly than that, another one was tasked with a huge strategic initiative to improve the writing of deviations or nonconformances, which is was an important piece of writing in their industry. Okay. So she hired us in what became an 8-year partnership. People from those courses that we delivered then hired us to work in another initiative to improve regulatory writing that went to federal regulators. And we did many of those courses. People from those courses then moved to other companies. So we got jobs in companies D, E, F, and G. We haven't actually counted how many companies we've worked with on this type of writing, but it all started about 15 or 20 years ago with a friend of a friend who we had let know we were interested.
So in addition to working your contacts and making sure that your performance and reputation can generate that kind of word of mouth through an industry and across many years, think about partnering with people you know who are doing different kinds of consulting work. There's the kinds of people who can complement your skills, fill in the gaps. You can wind up marketing each other. Matt Woolsey is a longtime friend of ours who's a specialist in executive coaching and individual communication. So we've worked with him on a number of projects. So look broadly at the business community as a whole and find a niche or two. We happen to focus on pharmaceuticals. It's more of a happy accident than a plan. But it gives you an opportunity to really learn about a business and take advantage of what you know. So we would argue, learn about that industry so you can market more effectively. That niche in the pharmaceutical industry we found allowed us to do specific training on a wide variety of documents and have individualized courses reflecting those documents, such as regulatory documents, the review process of regulatory documents, writing technical reports, strategy reports, and investigation reports. And the key takeaway is this: the more you know about an industry, the more credible you will be. They don't expect you to be an expert, but if you do know about the industry, you'll be able to customize what you deliver to your potential clients' specific business needs. No matter which industry you wind up actually working in, it's really critical that you create a web presence. Your potential business colleagues will look for you on the web, even if you've been recommended by a friend and colleague. Our website, for example, looks pretty fancy, but it was done with Wix, and there are off-the-shelf capabilities that you can get to produce a website. And you can just start with 2 pages. That's really all you need to begin. What you're going to offer and a bio, and then build from there over time.
I would say, too, that LinkedIn is as important as a website. I would imagine that just about every client who has hired us has looked us up on LinkedIn. So you'll see that in my LinkedIn page, I have specifically said that I am a professor at Northwestern and I'm also a communication consultant at Communication Partners. Once you have a personal LinkedIn page, you can also connect that to and create from that a company LinkedIn page. And you can decide how you might want to use that in order to market or advertise your business. Or even just to put in interesting posts that you think people might want to read so that they'll subscribe to your company LinkedIn page. Let's say you find a good consulting opportunity, especially one outside the university. What does the flow of work look like? Karl will explain.
So here's how a training and course engagement works. It goes through these 5 phases, no matter what client you wind up dealing with. Initial contact, creation of a statement of work, course design, course delivery, and then finally invoicing and payment. And it requires paperwork, lots of emails, and a lot of patience because it can take a while. So here's a real life example. Here's a process from initial contact to invoice and payment, and it can take a while. In this instance, 21 months. One of the things we typically do is sign a confidentiality agreement so we can do a needs analysis and development of statement of work so we can look at their actual documents and develop courses based on that. Once you have done a needs analysis by talking to the client, looking at their work, you're ready to write a proposal statement of work. And you really need to be specific about what you're going to deliver for that client and then what it will cost, fees, expenses, estimated costs. And we would urge you to charge back all of your expenses to the client and use that in your proposal. If the statement of work looks good and the client wants to work with you, they may decide to generate a master services agreement and a purchase order. Do that. The master services agreement is a boilerplate legal document. It deals with non-disclosure issues, specific legal requirements, sets out what's mine, what's yours. But what's really great about getting a master services agreement is once you're in the company, you're in. So if you have further work with the company, the first thing they'll ask you is, do you have a master services agreement? You say you do. They'll say, perfect. That's one piece of administrative burden they don't have to deal with. And in our original example that we were talking about, we had initial contact in February, and it took till August when we finally had a statement of work. At this point, with your agreement signed, you can start designing your course, and we use a lot of different tools to do that. We use Box to upload confidential material that's secure. We integrate the examples from the client itself in a system that we've developed. We have a methodological approach to do that. And we produce a takeaway booklet that we can hand to participants, which of course we charge the client for. However, we couldn't, in this instance, we couldn't design the course until we had a master services agreement, which wasn't finalized until April. So notice we went from initial contact in February of 2017 all the way to our master services agreement. It was done in April 18. Once we had that master service agreement, we'd sign it, design it, deliver the course, which we did in May the following year. The course goes great. Everybody loves us, but of course everybody does. Now it's time to invoice. So what you want to do when you invoice is to make sure that you have a good system to do it. You can use a single piece of paper to start, but if your business develops, you really should systematize it. We use a combination of an Excel spreadsheet, American Express for all our expenses, FileMaker Pro to track the invoices, but you could use QuickBooks or any kind of other accounting software that you find useful for you. So even after invoicing, there was a delay because the purchase order never was finalized. Finally, it was resolved in June of 2018. Finally, we received the payment in October of 18. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the sales cycle. Well, now we wanted to show this for you, not because this is the way it always happens. This is unusually long, but you should be patient and remember that businesses don't necessarily make decisions quickly. So it may take time to work through the sales cycle. And so be prepared for a long process.
On the other hand, you can also rely on some of those long processes to turn into repeat business. Even this morning, as we were preparing this video, we got a phone call from someone in that same company who wants to do training for 200 people. Mm-hmm. So that's, you put in your time at the beginning and you get some real benefits at the end. If you have done some consulting and you really like it, you find that you enjoy it, that it's valuable to you, you may want to think about taking your practice and turning it into a business, really making a business out of that.
So if you choose to consult, you need to get your ducks in a row. Mm-hmm. And while you think of yourself as a professor or a consultant, your client's organization thinks differently. It categorizes you as a vendor, and they're going to have certain requirements for vendors. You may not want to lose an opportunity because you don't meet those requirements.
Here's a quick list of steps to take to transform your consulting practice into a consulting business, and it comes with a disclaimer. This list is very US-centric because that's the business environment that Karl and I are most familiar with. If you are in a different country or even in a different state than ours, which is Illinois, there may be other requirements or other steps that you'll need to take. But this list is a good place to start, and you can ask whether in your location there are similar requirements. We won't read the list to you here, but we'll go over each step. The first one is to identify what type of business entity you will be. Typically for consultants and small consulting businesses like yours will be, you'll be either a limited liability corporation or a sole proprietorship. A sole proprietorship is simpler from a tax point of view. A limited liability corporation offers a little more protection of your personal assets. So you'll need to make that decision.
And you need to name your business, so your choices are basically use your own name, or do you want to be a brand? There's no right answer. Typically, starting with your name is what most people do, and you can always switch to a brand. But again, that's up to you, but you should have a name for your business.
Once you have a name for your business, then from a tax point of view, you want to apply for an employee identification number, an EIN. If you are a sole proprietor, it's perfectly fine to use your own Social Security number instead of an employee identification number. However, it does add to your credibility to have this separate number, and some people say that it also offers some added protection against identity theft to have a separate business tax number. So now you've gotten that far. You now need to make your business legitimate by registering it with the proper government entities. In Illinois, we have to register a business with the state, and that's with the Secretary of State's office. And then we also have to register a doing business as name with our county. Sometimes it's with the state. So who must register an assumed business name? Anyone who is running a sole proprietorship that isn't using their own name, like I'm not using Barbara Shwom, he's not using Karl Keller, we're instead using communication partners, must register that name with an authority. It's a good idea to do this, not only because it's required, but also because there have been several occasions in which clients have required a background check, and we've had to produce our DBA papers, we've had to produce our state registration to show that we are an authentic business.
And you want to also create a business presence and a business bank account. And the reason you want to create a business bank account is that your clients will probably want to move money into that account electronically, so it's good to keep them separate. And it's just not a good practice to mix your personal accounts with your business accounts. So set up a business bank account. So now you are officially a business.
We wish we could say that that's all the paperwork you have to do, but there's more. A big consideration is business insurance. In the pharma business, where we do a lot of our consulting, clients require that we carry general liability insurance. Interestingly, when I did a consulting gig for another U.S. university, that university also required that I carry general liability insurance. General liability covers any damage that you may cause to the client property or any damage you may suffer on the client property. We get ours from the Hartford, but there are many companies that sell it. Professional liability is a little more expensive. It covers any damage that may result from your work. Damage from communication consulting is a low probability event, but insurance may be required. Workers' compensation insurance may or may not be required. You'll have to see if you need it. In the state of Illinois, as a sole proprietorship, we are not allowed to buy it, so we don't. However, when we work in Puerto Rico, we have to buy a workers' compensation policy from the Puerto Rican government. We suggest that you wait to buy insurance until a client requires it, and to recognize that the $600 or $1,200 spent will be paid back many times over by the money it allows you to earn. You also have to develop a system for invoicing and tracking POs. So we use a spreadsheet for tracking POs, and we use FileMaker as a billing system for invoicing, and we are tracking on our invoices when we are paid, the dates we are paid, how we are paid, so we always know where things stand. Finally, even though you've set yourself up as a business, you have to always keep in mind that you are still an employee of the university, and you have to ensure that your consulting work doesn't violate your school's policies. Most universities ask faculty to sign a conflict of interest and conflict of commitment statement to give us an opportunity to reflect on where there may be a conflict and to eliminate it if it exists.
So here's the checklist. Identify the type of business entity you'll be. Name your business and get a business presence. Get an employee identification number. As Barbara said, this is an American thing, but you need to have some sort of governmental designation, most likely in your country. Register your business and business name. Buy business insurance, but not before you need it. Develop a system for invoicing and tracking purchase orders. Create a business presence and a bank account, a business bank account, and make sure you're not violating your school's policies. So given that's all that's involved in becoming a communication consultant, you might be asking yourself, is it worthwhile? Is it worth the time, the investment, all that you have to learn? Well, we think so for 4 reasons. The first reason is income. It can be a little or a lot, but it's useful in the 21st century to have multiple streams of income, and consulting can provide that.
The second is credibility. As a business communication faculty, we spend a lot of time in the classroom talking about business, and we typically don't spend so much time in business. A business communication faculty member who also works in business or even owns a business has a level of credibility in the classroom and elsewhere in the university that can't be matched by anything else. Universities acknowledge that there's value in doing this work. My university acknowledges it in the conflict of commitment form, which says that they value our working outside the university to enrich our teaching and our research within the university. Much of that value comes from what we learn, which is the third reason to do consulting. As a consultant, you have access to types of business communication that many researchers and faculty members never see. This informs both research and teaching.
And finally, as a consultant, you're adding value and touching the business community more closely than you would as a professor. When we teach undergrads or full-time MBAs, we hope they'll go ahead and use what they learn at their next job. But when we do consulting, we are affecting professionals who are working right now, and we can see the results, and that's very satisfying. So we hope this presentation has given you a good sense of what you can do to become a communication consultant. We know you already have the communication expertise.
And just as importantly, you have a community at ABC, the Consulting SIG, that can help you give you ideas and help you over rough patches. We'd love to see you participate in our SIG, no matter where you are in the consulting career.
So thank you very much for listening.
And we hope to see you at a future Consulting SIG session at ABC.